There's something about this song that makes it different from all the other Linkin Park hits. In it, Chester not only revealed his struggle with the cruel illness that took his life, but also revealed to the world the root of all these problems, the terrible traumas of his childhood. Today we're going to reveal the story behind Crawling by Linkin Park. I'm Guilherme, and you're watching Decipher Hits.
Crawling in my skin.
Despite being an incredible song, Crawling came out of the excruciating pain of the late vocalist Chester Bennington, who once said that this was the hardest song for him to sing live and also the most literal one he ever made. It's no wonder that the lyrics and the symbolism represented in the music video have an intimate connection with the singer's traumatic past. To understand this better, we need to go back to 1983 when Chester was just a 7-year-old child. At that time, his parents worked a lot to support the household, and he ended up spending a lot of time alone at home. It was during one of those times that an older man who claimed to be a family friend approached him with disgusting intentions. Chester said that it all started with inappropriate touching by the abuser, but soon he began to be beaten and forced to do things he didn't want to do. The abuse Chester suffered obviously became something that haunted him his entire life, triggering a cascade of problems that would soon consume him completely. And here, we see the first reference to this event right in the title of the song, which also starts the chorus. Crawling in my skin, these wounds will not heal. Chester's traumas were like a parasite crawling under his skin, causing him an agony that numbed him throughout his entire life. In an interview, he said that whenever he remembered what happened, his body would immediately start to shake. Chester never revealed the name of his abuser, but in the demo version of Crawling, he seems to give his opinion about him right at the beginning of the track.
I hate you so much right now. Since he was very young,
he was confused, scared, and didn't tell anyone. Out of fear that the abuser would want revenge, that his family would think he was lying, or even think he was homosexual, something that would be abominable to his conservative family. All of this caused him enormous anguish and distress, leaving him uncomfortable in his own body, which he also mentions in the lyrics. The discomfort took hold of me forever, distracting me, making me react. Unfortunately, Chester's nightmare was just beginning. When he turned 11, his parents got divorced, and Chester started spending much more time alone than before, which only increased the frequency of the abuse he suffered. His mother wasn't around because she had lost custody, and his father was emotionally unstable. On top of that, he worked long hours as a police detective. Do you know what's even more tragic about this? Chester's father specialized in child abuse cases, but he wasn't able to protect his own son. Feeling abandoned and unprotected, fear began to take over Chester, who, at just 11 years old, took a dangerous path to try to control that fear. But it quickly sent him into an irreversible downward spiral. Drug use.
drug use.
Fear is what brings me down, confusing what's real. The pain Chester felt only got worse with drugs, even confusing his perception of what was or wasn't reality. Chester was aware that the abuse he suffered as a child directly influenced his adult life. He said that when he saw a picture of himself as a child, he realized that all of this had already been happening even before he could remember. But now, under his skin, there were not only his traumas, which kept coming back to haunt him, but also the drugs he injected, pushing him into an endless cycle of self-destruction. Chester only stopped suffering abuse at the age of 13, but from then on, he only felt good when he was using drugs. For him, it was as if he regained the happiness, the self-confidence, and everything that his abuser took from him for so many years. However, as we explained in the analysis of Other Side by Red Hot Chili Peppers, the happiness provided by drugs always comes at a high price. And in a short time, Chester had become addicted to drugs, losing all his self-control.
This lack of self-control I fear is never ending.
I'm afraid this lack of control will never end. Chester used everything, and his addiction was destroying his life. It looks like you just came out of a concentration camp, his mother told him one day. She found out about Chester's addiction and, trying to get her son off drugs, stopped him from going out. He then tried to quit his addiction, giving up all drugs except marijuana, which he would smoke whenever he felt like using a hard drug. The only healthy way he found to try to escape this torment was through his passion for writing poetry and music, something that soon became his main calling. For a while, Chester even managed to quit drugs. In '96, at the age of 20, his life seemed to be going very well, and he even got married to Samantha, with whom he had a son. And just 3 years later, he was invited to be the lead singer of the Californian band Zero, which would later change its name to Linkin Park. However, with the band's success, Chester's marriage began to deteriorate, and in 2005 they were officially divorced. With the end of the marriage came a terrible relapse, and a few years later, Chester opened up about his mental health, telling fans that he suffered from depression.
Placed right here, this skull between my ears, that is a bad neighborhood, and I should not be in there alone. I can't be in there by myself.
What are you talking about? It's insane.
If I'm in there, I don't say nice things to myself. There's another Chester in there that's like, wants to take me down.
Unfortunately, just like this interviewer, many people don't understand how serious this psychiatric illness is, which makes it much harder for the person to open up for fear of being judged, or for people to think it's just being dramatic, sadness, having it easy, or having nothing better to do. Chester fought his whole life against this terrible anguish, and one of the ways he had to express himself was through his music. And that's why so many Linkin Park lyrics deal with this theme. And in them, he described in detail the anguish he felt.
Something inside me that pulls beneath the surface.
There's something inside me that pulls beneath the surface, consuming me, confusing me. To make matters worse, at the time of the divorce, Chester went back to using all kinds of drugs. He got to the point where he was so out of control that his bandmates had to step in before the worst happened. They said that sometimes I was Chester, and other times I was that other damn guy. I didn't want to be the other guy. I knew about my addictions, but I had no idea how much it affected the people around me, said the singer. Chester had everything: fame, money, success, and even got married again in 2007 to his new wife, Talinda, with whom he had 3 more children. But inside him, there was such an overwhelming emptiness that nothing seemed able to fill it. As he himself said in that interview, he was fighting an enemy that lived inside his own head. And his greatest fear was that this enemy would take control for good.
I can't seem to find myself again.
It feels like I won't be able to find myself again. My walls are closing in. Without self-confidence, I'm convinced this is too much pressure for me to handle. I've felt this way before, so insecure. He carried within himself a pain that only grew throughout his life, and that had its origins in that little Chester, just 7 years old. And that's why when the band started working on the Crawling music video, the abuse he had suffered became the main theme of the narrative, as the music video director himself said.
They really wanted to mix in a story that would help connect them to their fan base, to their kids. That's when we dealt with abuse.
Just like the song, the music video starts with what sounds like something being sucked down a sink drain, a metaphor for how Chester felt about himself. The doll, in contrast with the jewelry, indicates that we're in the room of a young girl who has just entered adolescence. Next, we see the young girl in the bathroom, crying dark tears as if it were a mix of makeup and blood, representing all the weight she carried at such a young age. The bruises on her arms, still sore, and around the girl's eyes reveal the reason for her tears. That reason is the same one that opens the bathroom door and approaches the young girl from behind. A man who appears to be much older than her. When he touches her on the shoulder, her world falls apart, and she seeks refuge by withdrawing into herself. There seems to be a safe place, but unfortunately not for long, since her subconscious is full of traumas, which here are represented in the form of criticisms, blue crystals that could have easily torn the girl apart if it weren't for one detail. With all their heart and effort, the song is performed by the band Linkin Park, which here represents a fortress that prevents the crystals from falling on the girl, protecting her from suffering more damage than she already has. In this way, the band creates a strong sense of connection in her, making her realize she is not alone, and that there is still hope. Anyone who knows Linkin Park knows that they have always taken the messages in their songs seriously, not to shock or to sell, but to transform people's lives. And that's what they tried to represent with the music video, in Mike Shinoda's own words. References to the traumas experienced by Chester are everywhere, from inappropriate and unwanted touching to the fear of being judged by others. Romantic relationships are also affected, since the victim did not develop their sexual maturity in a healthy way. All of this causes those sharp crystals to start collapsing on the girl again, who returns to seeking refuge in music while crawling inside herself, making yet another reference to the song's title. When she isolates herself in this place, she has no scars or bruises, but no matter how hard she tries, she always ends up finding inside herself that scene she tried to forget. It is exactly at this moment that Chester sings,
Against my will, I stand beside my own reflection.
"Against my will, I stand before my own reflection. It haunts me." When someone is a victim of abuse, it's very common for them to feel guilty or uncomfortable with their own body, and that's why they have trouble facing their own image, because that's exactly where everything that haunts them lives. Chester represents the girl's reflection in this scene, precisely because he identifies in real life with everything the character has been through. Eventually, the band puts so much energy into the song that they manage to drive away forever the crystals of trauma that were threatening the girl. She finally manages to face her own reflection again, and she smiles once more after escaping that abuse and moving on. But unfortunately, Chester Bennington didn't get the same happy ending. On July 20, 2017, he lost the battle against his inner demons and left this world, leaving his family, friends, and a legion of fans forever missing him. Some people say that the death of his friend Chris Cornell, the lead singer of Audioslave and Soundgarden, was a major trigger that pushed Chester over the edge. And tragically, that makes sense. If you look at how similar Chris's story was, he even sang about his own death in this famous song. If you want to know more about this story, just click on this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.